Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vago Muradian here at the Air Force Association's annual Airspace Cyber Conference and Trade Show just outside Washington, D.C., the #1 gathering of U.S. Air Force leaders from around the world on the 72nd anniversary of the United States Air Force. Today, September 18, 2019. Our coverage here is sponsored by L3 Harris and Leonardo DRS, and we're honored to be talking to the commander of the United States Air Mobility Command, General Mary Ann Miller. Ma'am, thanks so much for making so much time for us, because I know how busy you are at this show.
Absolutely, Vago. It's a pleasure.
I'm not going to start off by asking about transformation, because that's something that is already underway in the command. I want to go to Agile, whether you call it Agile basing or Agile operations, to get units in many, many more different places to sort of throw off an adversary that is able to strike at range with precision. That's going to put a very, very big burden on the airlift and the air mobility force more broadly. How are you going to work this? Because it's great to be putting a lot of different airplanes in a lot of different places and operating agilely, but at the end of the day, without logistics, it's kind of a theoretical exercise.
It will stress the logistics footprint. Right now, the logistics footprint we have across the world is very large targets, very big ramps, and very secure lines that we have around the world. We are trying to look at how do we take this big target and distribute it out, right? So it's important that we get after this and that we look at this, but it will stress the logistics chain and the supplying of our folks forward. Transcom will take those priorities and prioritize them, and within that, we will move where we need to move in a priority order to make that happen.
How are you working with novel operational concepts in order to be able to stretch out the force? There's a tendency of looking at the airlift force and saying, wow, it's so vast. If you add up the number of KC-135s, 17 C-5s, not including 130s and everything else you have, but then you realize, like, compared to the job that it has to do, it's kind of tight. So how are you going to get more per load, per airplane, in order to be able to support this force that's increasingly forward?
That is going to be the challenge, right? Each AOR, depending on what area of operation that we're working in, the European theater is going to be different than the Pacific theater, right? To support that distributed operations in the European theater, where just the pure surface area is a little closer, is going to be a little bit easier. When you look at the depth and breadth of the Pacific, much, much harder to get that supplied. But again, Transcom will prioritize that order based on the order of battle, how it's all flowing, how the fight's proceeding.
When it comes to equipment, I know that one of the things that you and the team have been looking at is, okay, so what does the next generation of lift asset look like? What are some thoughts you have on that? Because all the equipment everybody has is getting bigger. It's getting bigger than the boxes you have, and the weight of it is a challenge as well, because folks want to fly stuff. Funny enough, air is a very good way of getting things far away, but even when they're very heavy and your airplane can't handle it. What are you thinking in terms of what this force looks like? Because it's hard to imagine, the C-17 is no longer a spring chicken.
C-17 will be with us for a long time, right? It's a great asset, great airframe. We work closely with the Army, and we try to ensure that they don't build bigger than what we can carry. And C-17 can fully function and get them wherever they need to go. C-130 is challenged in some of the pieces of equipment that are out there right now, but still doable. The next airlifter is many decades away right now. Our focus right now is the tanker community.
And funny enough, you should bring that up. How satisfied are you? Right now we have the track issue, we have a pad-eye issue as well, right? The tie downs. Walk us through what the current challenge is, and whether or not you feel there's, is this the right airplane for the Air Force at the end of the day, given some of the challenges and problems it's had?
Yeah, some of the Cat 1 deficiencies for the KC-46. We can start with the RVS, the remote vision system. We've also got the APU duct issue that we've got going on. Most recently, the cargo locks on the floor have surfaced. We've got inadvertent contacts outside the boom, and that goes back to the RVS, and I'll talk to that in a second. And then the stiff boom. As far as the stiff boom, we're working closely with Boeing and the engineering and design and way forward is the contract's out there, and we're working with them. And we'll get on track with that. I need to keep that on track, but we'll resolve the stiff boom issue for sure. Cargo locks, not really worried about that. We'll work through that. So when you look at all the Cat 1 deficiencies, we will work through all of those, and I hope in a very timely manner. The one that really gets my concern is the remote vision system. There are 9 key performance parameters that Boeing and the Air Force have agreed to. 7 of those are moving along as far as meeting those requirements. The last 2, which really has to do with visual acuity and depth perception, are tough. It's all about the science, and it's a tough problem to solve. I need Boeing to understand that all 9 parameters they have to pass, not just 7 of the 9. And passing those 9 will give us the right science and the right capability to fix this RVS, to make sure we get it into the warfight as quick as we can. I'm on a 3 to 4 year path to do that. We need to stay on that. I cannot extend this beyond the 4th year.
Just so the audience understands, the remote vision system is there's no boom operator in the back of the airplane that's controlling it. There's a station up in the front of the airplane, and you're controlling the boom remotely. And that's the challenge, because you don't want inadvertent contact, especially for a low observable airplane that causes problems. You're somebody who has a reputation for being a very measured commander, and the understanding is you're very frustrated by this. I mean, at the end of the day, every new airplane has challenges, but this airplane happens to have a little bit more challenges. Are you convinced that this is the right airplane for the United States Air Force, and it's going to be the airplane that you need for the future?
We've accepted 19. This is the right airplane. We need to make sure it stays on the path, right, to have the RVS in the hands of our warfighter. So you're right. The boom operator sits at a panel. It's not looking through a glass, eyeball to eyeball, which is a very comfortable place to be. Having our boom operators, there are 2 cameras that are below the aircraft, and they present that receiver to the boom operator, so they're looking through cameras. And in essence, it's like having 20/50 vision for our boom operators at best, and it's like not understanding where that last 2 feet of that boom is. So you can see what a challenge that would be for any boom operator to operate in that kind of environment. So I cannot today put this aircraft in the fight. We cannot put it in the fight until the RVS is fixed and meets all those critical performance parameters.
And do you feel confident that the contractor is going to be able to deliver fixes? Because there was also the debris issue on a lot of the airplanes, where you talked even to the folks on the flying end of it, and there's a little bit of frustration about wiring bundles and things like that, aside from the fact that of some of the debris that's been in manufacturing debris that's been found. Are you finding more problems with those airplanes, and is that going to be another issue that over the long term is something that is going to have to be dealt with?
The last airplane that we accepted had 0 FOD issues. So DCMA has done a tremendously, just a great job overseeing their process, their procedures, making sure the right steps are in place to prevent FOD along the way, along that line. And DCMA will continue to be the watchdog and oversight of that. And so we've accepted airplane number 19 with no FOD issues. We hope that continues.
One last question on the Civil Reserve Air Fleet. That's a critical part of the way the nation has projected force for a long time. These are commercial carriers that come in toward the rear of any fight, integral in Iraq, integral in Afghanistan, and every other conflict we fought in for very many decades. But there is a little bit of a concern that given the nature of ultra-long-range weapons that our adversary has, that dynamic may change a little bit, and folks may feel a little bit less comfortable knowing the other guy's got very, very long sticks to, how are you talking to the community and ensuring that this critical partnership survives? I mean, is this an issue, or is this a little bit overrated? But what are the kind of conversations you're having with the major air carriers that are such integral partners of the Air Force?
I spend a lot of time with our craft and commercial augmentation partners, and we walk through sharing of intel. We walk through sharing of cyber practices. That contested environment, we know we're going to be GPS denied. They're experiencing it right now. We're experiencing it every day, too, because we fly in the same areas of the world, right? So the threats are out there. They know, though, that we will not put them in a high-threat environment. The contract we have with them, the relationship we have with them, they will go into a low-threat environment, a permissive environment. We will not send them into anything that's above that. So that will then make us, depending on what area we're going into, we may have to hold them short, transload onto gray tails, and take it further, right? So we anticipate that that's the way we're going to have to adjust for that environment. Combatant commanders know, though, that they need to create the conditions and set the conditions so that we can stay permissive as long as we can, so we can keep the flow going to get things pre-positioned.
And let me ask one last equipment question, because I'm about to get the hook. On capability, right, if you look at air and missile defenses, that's becoming a bigger challenge and a question mark. From the standpoint of the whole air mobility fleet, do you need better on-aircraft defensive systems and look at new systems in order to protect some of those critical assets, given that at the end of the day, the ability to provide that logistical support is going to be as critical as the delivery of combat power?
Mm-hmm. We're looking at that. Each weapon system, we're looking at increasing the capabilities for that contested environment. The budget will be the stress against that. But at each weapon system, we are literally going down and deciding what is the best feature to add to that airplane to get through the permissive environment. We want sensors to be able to sense a battlefield. We need to stay connected to the network, and we need to be survivable. So those are the things that we're trying to get at with each weapon system. Against the pressure against that is the budget.
General Mary Ann Miller, Commander of the Air Mobility Command. Ma'am, thank you so very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.